Hey everyone, today we're going to be starting to talk a little bit more about algebra, particularly talking about equations with variables. So, just to remind you, variables are letters in the equation that take the place of a number. Sometimes a variable can mean one number or it can mean a lot of numbers. So, once you understand what a variable is, then I would encourage you to kind of think of it as mystery. You're solving that case of what does that variable equal. So that's why I like this so much, is because I love mysteries, and that hopefully is something that you can see the fun in. So, writing equations with variables is a very broad topic. There are many different types of equations, many different operations, or how many operations you can do in one equation. So there's really no one good set of notes in order to help you out with this. But there are some tips. So, to write equations with variables, make sure to use these strategies. And we've talked about these in class, so hopefully these kind of ring a bell. First one is identify the variables. You're not going to be able to solve the equation if you don't know what the letters mean. So if you need to physically write it out, highlight it, something, but do whatever you need to do to know what those variables mean. Second is to create math equations that make sense with the problem. Then look for patterns. So if you have a situation in which you can visualize, or you can play with some numbers, do that and then see if there is a common theme between all those numbers or all those equations. Next is going to be write a rule in words to describe the general pattern. So, taking what you've created and then writing out that rule that you see. Next is going to be convert your rule to an equation, which again sounds pretty difficult, but once you have that rule down and we've practiced this skill a couple of times or over and over again, hopefully it should be in your brain. The next two are probably one of the most obvious, but students often forget about it. First is think about whether your equation makes sense. Some students just get in such a habit of, oh, this is the answer, let's go, that we forget this step. Well, it's one of the most important steps. Doesn't make sense. If I'm doing a problem where I'm taking away a number of items, I'm not going to add, because that is the exact opposite of what I'm trying to do. And then that last step is to test. Test a few numbers with your equation to see if it works. If it doesn't work, you know you have that wrong equation. So this is, again, kind of that broad rules to follow. We will be practicing a lot of this, so make sure that these stick in your mind, especially those last two, and that first one. I think or all of them are important, but those three are my favorite. Don't forget that in algebra, when you use multiplication, they do not use that x sign or that x to mean multiplying. Instead, x is a very common variable that you are going to see. So often, starting now and in your future, when you see an x in an algebraic equation, they mean a variable. They do not mean multiplication. So, to help you out with creating equations based on these words and these sentences and different situations, here are a few keywords that we've actually talked about this year. So, we have addition, add, increase by, sum, more than, plus; subtraction, subtract, decrease by, minus, difference, less than; multiplication, multiplied by, product of and times; and division is divided by, and quotient. Then for equals, we have is equivalent to, is the same as, is equal to, and just the word is. So that is good to help you identify what operation you need. Okay, so writing the equation is only one part of variables. There's actually many parts, many steps that you'll be learning along the way. But this is our next step that we definitely can do. So in some equations, the variable is equal to a number. Your job is to solve that equation with that amount. And you'll know when the situation comes up, because it's going to ask you for a specific amount, and it's going to tell you what one of the variables equals. So here's our example problem. The equation C equals 5n represents the amount of money a theme park makes in a day, with C equal the total amount and n equal number of people. If there are 10 people, how much money would the park make? So again, we're given an amount for one of the variables, and they're asking us for a specific number. So finding the other variable. And this might look scary, but if you follow these 3 steps, it hopefully should be easy. So step 1, identify what variable your number represents. So we know that according to our problem, n is the number of people. And I was given the number of 10 people. So literally, look at the labels, 10 people. That's why it's super important to I know what each letter represents. So again, I have the 10 people. I know that 10 people is going to represent n because it says in my problem, and it represents the number of people. Yay! Step 2, plug in that number in the equation and solve for it. So I have my equation that was listed in my problem, C equals 5n. Instead of n, though, I am replacing it with my number 10. So I now have the equation C equals 5 times 10. Remember, if they're right next to each other, the letter and the variable, that means they're multiplying. They're not going to write that multiplication sign. So now I actually need to multiply 5 and 10 together, and I'm going to get my final answer of 50. So again, I took the number that was given, plugged it into my equation, and solved for it. That gives us the last and final step for this is just to make sure you label your answer. This is something, again, I see a lot of students forget. We know that C represents money, so I'm going to put that money sign and put $50. And that's it. The only thing that I would like you to remember is don't forget to use order of operations to solve equations. So in the future, you might be given more than one variable in an equation. It's super important to make sure that order of operations is being used. If you have any questions, please let me know.